So I think of endurance as made up of three very important things: efficiency, output over time, which is like your isometric muscular output over time, and recovery. And I'm going to go into each one of these. But first, I want to talk about the alternative, which I don't know what the alternate word to endurance is, or the antonym of endurance, but it's fatigue, fatiguing fast, making stupid choices, and using wasteful mechanics. That's the downward spiral of horn playing right there. We want efficient mechanics, enduring output, and smart recovery. And that is what gives us endurance. And these slides will be available to you, by the way. So feel free to take notes, but you'll get the slides. So when we talk about efficiency, we're talking about minimal motors. So you're not moving things that don't need to be moved. So, for example, do your eyebrows need to be moved when you play horn? Do you, or um, do you maybe need to move things as much? For example, oftentimes, like say I'm lifting this pencil I've got in my hand. If I can like flex my biceps super hard to lift it, but I don't need to. Instead, I want to lift it as relaxed as possible. That's minimal motors and minimal. And then when it comes to minimal recruitment of muscles, that's a little different. What I'm talking about here is that maybe we don't even need so many muscles. For example, when you roll in, playing a high C is a heck of a lot easier. It requires a lot less muscles than when you play a high C on a rollout. Most of you have this experience so far, right? Thumbs up if that's true for you. Yeah. So that's leverage. Within leverage, we want to use the least amount of effort as possible, but we still need to roll in our lips. So we want to roll in our lips as easy as we can, but we also want to make sure that, for example, we roll in our lips or we have our tongue in the right place to create maximum leverage so that we don't have to work so hard. We're efficient in our mechanics. It's the difference between holding your horn way out in front of you, my shoulder's going to get tired very fast, versus holding my horn underneath with my elbow crooked into my body. I can hold it a lot longer because I have more leverage here. So the things that give us that leverage are TCE, number one, because the tongue can stay up there all day long, no problem. The roll in, having the embouchure resist getting rolled out is another way to put it. Jaw and air direction. For example, it may be that if you move your jaw in or out a little bit, it makes the high notes just much easier. You have more leverage without having to do any kind of muscular work. It's you're moving your bones. Anytime that you can move a bone to get a job done rather than moving a muscle to get a job done, you're better off. For example, stacking your weight versus leaning to the side. You're going to get a lot more tired fast if you're leaning way off to the side than if your bones are stacked. Make sense? Yeah. And then things like avoiding spreading and pulling. So if you're spreading your face out as you play, you're going to have to use more muscles. You're going to be less leveraged for the notes that you're playing. So doing things that are uh, antonyms or that don't work antagonistically to playing, we want to minimize those. And then optimal air. If you're overblowing or underblowing or tensing in your air system, you're going to be less efficient. This all compute? So that's what I mean by efficiency. So I want you to think for a second where your opportunity for efficiency is. Is it minimal motors? Is it maximum? Is it leverage? Is it about your air? Because we're going to focus on some stuff right now. Yeah, lead pipe angle, Heidi says. Mm-hmm. I find my lead pipe angle is still something I adjust every day. Little tweaks to find exactly the most comfortable place for a note. And then equipment. So it is true that the equipment that we play, we may be less or more efficient on. If you're playing a huge open mouthpiece, but that huge open mouthpiece is connected to a highly resistant horn, like a really tight Geyer or something, your equipment might be mismatched and you might have to do a lot of work at the embouchure level in order to compensate for equipment that isn't um, tuned to be efficient. This is what the San Francisco Symphony guys do. They built that their mouthpieces to be perfectly tuned to their equipment so that they had to do the least work possible with their faces because they have to play super loud in Davies Hall. And I remember when John Ring, the second horn, convinced me to buy one of his mouthpieces because I was playing with the symphony, put it on my Rauke, and I was like, oh, that's really different. Um, Sebastian says describe minimal motors again. Minimal motors is basically using the least amount of effort as possible when you are doing something. So if you even if you just move your horn left and right, and then if you kind of like tense your body and squeeze your horn harder than you need to squeeze it as you move it left, you should be doing this, Sebastian. We all to learn experientially. If you move your horn left and right, but then squeeze your horn, squeeze it hard, and notice what that extra tension does. You're going to tire out a lot faster if you squeeze your horn hard. That would be
I guess
minimal motors.
I guess that still sounds like minimal recruitment of muscles to me. What's the difference
Well,
between recruitment of muscles and the minimal motors?
yeah, the difference is that you're using the same exact muscles to do this. I didn't ask you to use any additional muscles, right? You're just tensing them more. You're tensing the same muscles more. With minimal recruitment, I would bring the horn closer to me. I'd hug it and I'd spin from my body. I'm using different muscles and more leverage. I could do this all day long. Does that make sense? Cool. Then we're going to talk about enduring output or yeah. So this is just about how much we can actually do. So let's say that I'm doing something semi difficult. I've got my horn out in front of me and I'm moving it left to right. My shoulder muscles have to work. Well, I will get tired at some point, and how much I can do is a question of my output. So the neurological output here is something that can actually improve in days. And this is really cool. This is why when you come back from playing from a vacation, anybody experience you come back from vacation playing the horn, you get tired really, really fast. And within a couple days, it's like, whoa, I'm really way more back in shape. Anybody experience that? Show of hands. I Has anybody experienced it that after a long vacation they come back to the horn and they have exactly the same endurance that they did when they got back? Yeah, you're laughing. No, it's and so what happens is not necessarily muscle wasting, it's neurological changes. Your neurological recruitment is not primed. It's more like if you spoke Spanish and you stopped speaking Spanish for a while, and then you went back into the Spanish speaking things. Your Spanish, it'd be like not greased, you know. So we don't grease the groove here. So neurological efficiency can improve in days. If you have a gig coming up and you need a lot of endurance, you can actually get substantially more endurance in a matter of days by working on this. By working on it intelligently. I'm going to talk about smart choices in a second. So then there's myofascial, which is actual change in the uh, in the muscle fibers and in the fascia and connective tissue. So that takes the longest, but we all have connective tissue here. We've got tendons and ligaments and fascia, and all of that adapts to the stimulus of horn playing. And that's why you have a beginner horn player, they're never going to have the endurance of someone who's played for 25 years straight, right? It's not just about that they're muscles, that they're less efficient. It's actually we have like muscular, I've got like I used to have like six pack chin abs when I was playing in the Hong Kong Phil. That takes time. There's some hacks as well for how to produce more output in in a given scenario. One of them is creatine. This is the helps you produce more ATP. It's used by athletes around the world. Jane's used creatine for horn playing before. I've used creatine for horn playing. Super safe, effective, and really good for giving you more gas in the tank. Another hack that I've experimented with in the last couple of years is called pre-workout. Does anybody ever know what pre-workout powder is? I feel like Matthew Vega might. He looks like he's used some pre-workout at some point in his life. Have you used pre-workout before, Matthew?
I've never used it myself. I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah, it's something that's marketed to people that work out, and it usually has some mixture of like caffeine, beta alanine, taurine, things that really increase your muscular output for about 2 hours. And it's pretty crazy. I would recommend getting the kind that doesn't have caffeine in it because it's really bad for jitters on if you're performing. But this stuff, no, it's called no stim pre-workout. Can if you've got a concert where you need to last, like, can actually make a big difference. Electrolytes. This changes the way that our muscles fire. And so if your electrolytes are off, you're going to get tired faster, or if you're dehydrated. So this is why Jack just said he used to use Gatorade pre-workout. Gatorade is sort of crappy electrolytes, but there's some really good electrolytes on the market, including those that have no sugar, no flavor, no artificial whatever. Electrolytes and water. Electrolytes and water. If you're dehydrated and you bad electrolyte balance, the actual electrical signals that operate your muscles aren't going to be firing as effectively, so you're going to get tired really fast. And then finally, sleep. If you have a big gig or need a lot of endurance, getting 9+ hours of sleep beforehand, or getting sleep plus a nap, or banking sleep for the week before is um, going to really help. Huge differences in output for underslept versus well slept athletes, and this is an athletic issue. Matthew asked, "What's a good electrolyte source?" I am going to put that in the slides. Whoops, some of my favorite electrolytes. Let me edit the slides so that you can have it there. I like LMNT. Uh, Paleo Valley has really good electrolytes. The cheap ones are Liquid IV is really crappy, but it's sugar. And then I use also and just search if you search for Amazon for no sugar, no flavor electrolytes. Those are those are really good. Okay. All right. And then Elizabeth says working out in general, even just long walks, can really help with blood flow, which helps with facial muscles as well. I'm about to talk about that. So good job, Elizabeth. You're right. That's the athletic health right there. Oops. Ah. Ah. Okay, lymph and overall health. If if you have poor lymph flow, then you're going to have a hard time with clearing the waste products that build up. And and so there's like little massages you can do to clear your lymph before and after you play, running down the face towards the keys of the collarbone. I can't quite get into it, but getting this stuff really cleared out will actually quite help, and it's a very soft touch. Going for walks. Going for walks clears lymph. Lymph does not circulate on its own. It requires gravity and the movement of the body in order to circulate and clear that stuff out. So just being in overall good health changes your capacity to output dramatically. And then athletic health takes it to the next level. If you challenge yourself to a limit, for example, sprinting or running until you can't anymore, lifting weights until to near failure, doing things to near failure will challenge your nervous system, it's called your metabolic output, to get stronger. And so your overall metabolic output, how much energy you can output over time, will get substantially better. Okay, so let's take a minute, deep breath, look at this list. A lot of opportunities here. Jack says swimming is great for this. Totally agree. Okay, is this useful so far as an overview? Okay, cool. Yeah, these are the keys to the endurance kingdom. And then finally, let's say that you're playing efficiently, you're using minimal motors, you're recruiting your muscles minimally, you're using leverage, you're hydrated, you've got your electrolytes, you're well slept, etc. Well, what if you need to be able to recover in between things as well? Because you simply cannot, for example, play the French horn for an hour straight, keep it on your face for a whole hour, hold it for an entire hour, breathe with the mouthpiece on your lips for the entire hour. That would never happen, never work, no matter how efficient you are. So we need to look at recovery. We need to look at time to put the horn down, take it off the face, chop flops, that kind of stuff. In the big picture level, there's this risk of negative cycles, aka insult to injury. I think Mary Claude experienced that. I'm not sure if she's here. Yeah, she is here. That's when you get a little bit past your point of recovery in the harm zone, and then you practice there again, and it makes it even harder, and then makes you more and more prone to injury, and that kills your endurance, kills your range. It's really painful negative cycle to be in. You can also do that in the middle of music. So that's at the big level, but in the micro level, if you're playing a passage and you go too far to failure and you still have to play, then you've already failed and your face is shot, and now you have to play on top of that. Now you're really risking insult to injury. So we should never let ourselves get to a place when we're playing that our face gets fully shot, unless like it's the last note of the Siegfried call and you're about to win the final round of the New York Philharmonic. Like, fine, take it to failure. But yeah. Jack says this makes me wonder how brass masters who are terrible to their bodies, junk food, beer, cigarettes, function at the highest levels despite treating their bodies like dumpsters. They don't. They don't function at the highest levels. And they're functioning at a high level of achievement in a very narrow band of performance. But if you look at if you consider who they might be if they took care of their bodies, if they took care of their spirit and their emotions, how they might play even differently, it's mind-boggling to consider the potential that's there if they cleaned up their diets and their actions. Smart recovery. Mouthpiece off the lips. Mouthpiece off the lips. Grumbine. John Grumbine learned about this in the capstone. How important was taking the mouthpiece off the lips in your capstone, John? He's saying he's got to unmute himself, but I know he's already saying it's very important.
Very important.
Very important, exactly. Clearing lactic acid and waste products, things like chop flops, hydrating, moving a little bit to get the lymph flowing, to get things flowing. You can do you can do clearing stuff in 4 bars of rest, and you can do this. And do it before you go to failure. That's smart failure. So never go to total failure in a passage. Cut notes short if you need to. That's the first thing. So say we've got a 8-beat note and you're starting to feel like you're going to fail on beat 8, cut it short on beat 6. That's okay. That's okay. No one's going to die. Or don't play at all. If there's a note that is going to hurt you, just leave it out. Or play it down an octave. And I need you to remember these techniques because we're about to play a passage that I don't think any of you are going to get through easily. It's not, I'm not going to get through it easily. I'm going to take notes out from this passage. So, um, remember these techniques and remember never go to failure, especially we're going to play this passage a few times. So cut notes short, don't play at all or play it down an octave. Sebastian.
So I thought, and maybe you didn't say this earlier, but does it make sense to play to failure in practice in order to get to that point of total exhaustion? You're
Yeah,
just
really
saying
good question.
don't so I think you're saying just don't go to total failure, in a concert situation or public situation. I may have misheard that. Go ahead.
No, that's a very good clarifying question. Thank you. I'm going to speak to that in a second. Or am I? Let me answer this now, and then I've got a chart that I'm going to show you in a second. But basically, um, you first of all, you basically never need to go to complete failure in an athletic activity in order to get adaptive growth. And since we're not trying to destroy our muscles or grow our muscles necessarily, and we have to do the thing day in, day out. Like if you had 5 days to recover, it'd be okay to go to complete failure in a practice session and take 5 days to recover for your tissue. That would actually be okay. But if you're going to be playing the next day or the day after, absolutely freaking don't do that. Go to just shy of failure. You're still going to get an adaptive recovery, but it's going to be a sustainable adaptive recovery. But yes, the Caruso method has a good failure-based system where you just keep going up half steps until you can't comfortably do it anymore. And then you take a 30-second break and you start where you left off, and then you go up until you can't do it anymore. And then you stop, and that's the end of your practice session for the day. Something like that. It's like really kind of edging towards failure, but it's safely edging towards it. That's fine in a practice session. That answer the question? Great. As far as fast fatigue, here's the recipe. Be in poor overall shape. Like, don't be athletic. Don't ever go for a walk. Don't ever exercise. Hold high systemic tension. Keep your shoulders up to your ears. Keep your face really tense. Be mentally stressed. Be poorly rested and dehydrated. And pre-fatigue yourself. Don't just warm up, but actually warm up until you're completely exhausted. And then and go to failure and then try and play a concert. This is the recipe for fast fatigue. Wasteful mechanics. Scrunch your face a bunch. Spread your embouchure. Try this as I'm describing it. Try scrunching your face, spreading your embouchure, and then playing with too much air and resistance. I'm gonna burn out fast. Physical tension. Unnecessary physical tension kills sound. Stupid choices. My favorite category of life. Overplay. Play louder and harder than you need to. Be a misattuned hero who thinks that you need to be heard right now above everybody else. Don't realize how strident and bright your sound is. Don't realize that actually, if you back off a little bit, it's actually going to be louder and project better. Prioritize the sheet music over your well-being. I must complete this passage. It doesn't matter if I hurt myself or I feel terrible. Care about your ego more than your longevity. What will the people next to me think if I take a note off? What will, what if I miss that note? Because what if I miss that note? I'll be so ashamed. I better press as hard as I possibly can to make sure I get that note. Care about your longevity more than your ego. Definitely. Keep the mouthpiece on your face to cut off all the circulation while you're playing. This is one, we're going to experience this in the passage that's coming up. the Tchaikovsky, there's a lot of opportunity in this passage. Get the mouthpiece off your face. And I want you to experiment with taking it off for 2 beats or 3 beats in between and see what a big difference it makes. So this is what, compete with the trombones behind you. This is what Sebastian was talking about, this growth zone. There's things that are easy, and then there's a little bit harder, which causes growth. And then outside that, there's distress, there's harm, and then there's permanent injury or death. And obviously, we don't want to end up in the black zone. We don't want to end up in the red zone. But playing in the distress zone is a little too risky. You will get growth by backing off just a little bit and staying in the green and the light yellow. So remember, safety first, benevolence second. What does benevolence mean here? Can someone describe what I'm getting at? What does benevolence mean? I see Gigi, but I really want someone else to answer your question for once. What does benevolence mean in this situation? Sandy.
Being respectful and kind to your limits as you feel them coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Holding an intention for good. Holding an intention for good to unfold. Good music, good for yourself and good for your learning. All right, so I'm going to give 4, 3, 2, 1, play on the downbeat. There's actually some pickups in the third and first horn going into rehearsal 69, coming off of the oboe solo, but I think it's just easier if we start on the downbeat of 69 altogether. So 4, 3, 2, dee-dum, bum, 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 like that. All right, let's do it. So anyway, to review, the gold the gold the golden triangle of endurance is having good efficient mechanics, smart recovery, and creating enduring muscular output, which we talked about the many factors of. Um, oops. And the alternate to endurance is fatiguing fast, stupid choices, and wasteful mechanics. So now it's time for questions and or office hours coaching. Any questions, comments on the endurance situation, on endurance presentation? Jack.
I would just comment that it's kind of a slippery slope down to the fatigue side. You know, if there are any number of the things that you've recommended to do that we don't do, the other parts that cause fatigue can start to seep in and grow that red triangle. But I feel like the more you focus on the green triangle on those little items, they can also bleed in that direction as well. So they're kind of contagious in that way, I find.
Like smart recovery can it can help with efficient mechanics.
Absolutely. The more you start to build
Exactly.
an awareness around these things, the more you be curious about how many different ways can I be and contribute to efficiency versus, oh no, I'm starting to spread. Now I'm going to have tension. Now I'm, causing lactic acid buildup, and I'm so rushed. I didn't prepare and take my electrolytes. I didn't get enough sleep. Like it's just kind of they compound on each other.
Exactly. Yep. It all is creating an upward spiral is the name of the game.